Okay, so in this lesson, we're just going to show you quickly how to create formulas and functions. So make sure when you've downloaded this file that you're on the Grade tab here. We have two grades, Grades and Budget. We'll get to Budget in a minute. Right now we're on Grades. And here is a spreadsheet of a teacher's class with the students' names and their IDs and how they've done on the different tests. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a few different things. First, we're going to get the total points that they've earned, and then we're going to come over here and get the average. After we do that, we're going to come down here and get which test score was the highest, the lowest, and what was the average test score for the individual exams. Okay? So let's start with over here on the total for Burnett. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. Hopefully you'll be able to see this easily. All functions and formulas start with an equal sign. So you start with an equal sign. And we're going to do this a couple different ways. The idea is just to kind of expose you to the different ways you can do it, so that way when you're on your own you can figure out which is best for you in that situation. So we can come over here and we're going to click on the first exam, which is an 84. As soon as we click on that with our mouse, notice the cell reference C5 is automatically put in. They're going to hit the plus sign. So on your numeric keyboard on the right hand side, hit the plus. Take your mouse and click on exam 2. Notice the cell reference automatically goes in. Hit the plus. Hit exam 3. Click on exam 3, plus. And then exam 4, plus, and then click on the final exam for that final cell reference. After you click on that final exam cell reference, which is G5, all you have to do is hit enter. And when you hit enter, notice the total 411 automatically goes into the cell. If you look up on your formula bar here, notice the formula is written in the formula bar, but the number is just shown in the tab or in the cell. Let's go to the Huff, the next student. We're going to start with an equal sign, and instead of using your mouse, you can use your keyboard, your hands on your keyboard, and arrow over. If you look closely, you should see me arrow over to the first exam, which is a 78, and again the cell reference is there. Hit the plus sign, and again using only the keyboard, not touching the mouse, I'm going to use my left arrow key again to come over to the second exam, plus, left arrow over to the third exam, plus, and then arrow over to the fourth exam, plus, then arrow over to the final exam. Again, it's the same formula. The only difference is we use the keyboard instead of the mouse to select the cells. Then you hit enter. Okay? Now, we can do this again by doing it the long way, or since we've created the formula once, we can use the relative cell reference just to copy this formula down. So click on the Huff total here and bring your mouse over to the lower right hand corner. Click on the lower right hand corner. Notice there's a little handle there. When you click and hold and drag down, you can see the outline of where you're dragging. When you let go, that formula is automatically copied down. And because it's relative cell reference, as we go from one row to the next, you can see the rows automatically change. The columns stay the same. So if you look up here, the C, D, E, F, and G stays the same, but as you arrow down, the row changes from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? Now that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to use the auto sum function. So come back up here and delete this real fast. And I'm going to show you a different way to do it. Click in the Burnett total column here. And instead of doing one cell at a time, we're going to use these auto sum or auto functions up here. So if you come up and you see where it says auto sum, you can click on that, and it automatically guesses what you want to add together. Now notice in our example here, it guessed that it wanted to use the ID number. But the problem is that's not an exam number, that's an ID number, so we do not want to include that in our average. So you got to take our mouse and just click and drag over these cells that we want to add together for the final exams, and then hit enter, and then you've got the same total, just a different and maybe quicker way of doing it. Let's practice that one more time with Huff. Click where the total should be. Oh, actually, another way to do it is a lot of people like to highlight the cells that they want to add together and then include the empty cell where you want the answer to be. Then come up to the auto sum function and notice the answer automatically is added to that last cell. And if I click on that, double click on it, you can see the sum function is automatically added to it. And then we can click and drag and copy that formula down. Okay? Now that is the total. To now what we want to do is get the average of our grades, which is the total. The average function is the total divided by the number of items. So we're going to do it the long way first, and then I'll show you kind of just to teach you the order of operation. Then we're going to do it the short way. So here's the more detailed way, is to first start with an equal sign. Now we want to take the total, which is 411, and we want to divide by, which is the / the number of items that we're adding together. In this case, we're adding 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So divided by 5. So it's the total divided by 5. And so our average here, and I'm going to come out just a little bit so you can see it, our average is 82%. Okay? A quicker way to do that is to use, again, the auto function up here by coming up here to the drop-down menu and choose average. When you choose average, it guesses what you want to average together. In this case, it guessed the cell above, and we don't want to average the cell above. We want to average the cells to the left. So take your mouse, click and drag. Do not include the total now, because the total is all those averaged up. We just want to choose the exam grades, and it should be, if you look here, the range C6 through G6. Then you hit enter, and that gives us our average for the student named Huff. Let's practice that one more time. Click where you want the answer, come up to the auto function, click the drop down and choose the average. It guessed wrong, so take our mouse, click only those 5 exam grades that were averaged together, not the total, the average exam grades, and it should be the range C7 through G7, and hit enter. So an average of 86.6. And then again, you have that other option where you highlight the, I really can't do that. So let's copy this function down now. Come to the lower right hand corner, click and drag it down. So now we have the average. Let's come up here and give it the heading, average. So now we know that what that is. And there you have it. Pretty quick, pretty easy. We can come down here now and we're going to find for each exam what was the highest grade, which is the max, what's the lowest grade, which is the minimum, and what was the average grade per exam. So come to the first exam grade, click in that cell, which should be cell C13, and we're going to come up to the function, quick function, auto function button here, and we're going to choose max. And again, it guesses what we want to find the highest number in. And notice we have these 2 blank cells. It's never good to include cells that you don't need to, in case you want to use those later. So I'm going to come and click and drag and highlight just those cells and then hit enter. So the range should be C5 through C10, and the highest grade in exam 1 was a 98. Then you can take your mouse and click and drag that over. We're going to come to the minimum, which is the lowest grade. We're going to do the same thing. highlight cell C14, come up to the auto sum function, and this time we're going to choose minimum, and it guessed just that we wanted to do the cell above it, which is wrong, so we have to take our mouse and highlight the cell range, which again is C5 through C10. Hit enter, and so the minimum or lowest grade was a 77, and we can click and drag and high copy that formula over using relative cell reference. Then we can do the same thing with the average function. Come up, hit the average function here, highlight the cells that we want to average together, and hit enter. It gives us our average grade for that first exam was 85.8. Now, typically you don't want to use this many decimals, so I'm going to come up here under the Home tab, under the Numbers section, and I'm going to decrease when there's two small buttons, one increases, one decreases. Decrease the number of decimals to 1. So it's 85.1, or 85.8%. Then I'm going to copy that formula across, and voila, there we have our average for each grade and our average for each student. Okay? If we wanted to find out the average for the entire class, we could do that very easily using the same methods. Click where it says average, come up and choose the average function. Highlight just the grades we want to average together. The average for the class is 83. Then go ahead and find the minimum and the maximum. So the minimum, click on that cell, choose the minimum function, select just the range we want to use. The minimum grade, the lowest grade was a 72. Then we do the same thing for the maximum here. Come up, choose the maximum grade, select the cells, and you got the highest grade was an 83, the lowest grade was a 72. I want to do one more function here, which is called the count function. So we're going to come down here, and below average, I'm going to skip a line and just say count here. And what the count function does is just counts the number of cells with information in it. So if we want to know the number of students, say, that we had, that's how why you would use the count function. So under here, count, select underneath ID. We're going to come up here to our auto functions and choose count numbers. And then come here and just click and drag just over the ID. And it's going to count the number of cells with a number in it. When you hit enter, the answer is 6. So in this example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students. Obviously, it's with a number this low, we can just count ourselves, but it's a good function to know when you use a spreadsheet with larger numbers or larger number of items that are in there. Okay, so that's a quick introduction to the different functions and how to add and average numbers together. Your assignment now is to kind of take what you've learned here and do it on your own. So if you come down here to the budget tab, notice here is a quick, short, small budget for January, February, and March. Your assignment is to come up with the totals, just like we did in the last example, the total for clothing, the total for food, gas, in each category. Then I'd like you to come up and add the word average and get the average cost for clothing, food, gas, and rent, just like we did a minute ago. Come down here and get the totals, find the max, min, average, and then I'd like you to do a count function and count the number of items that we have in our budget. And then that should be a function also. If you have any trouble with it, come back to our example here. You can double click on each area to find out kind of what you did and how you added that stuff together, or back the video up, rewind the video, and watch the process again and just apply it to this personal budget. and it should not take you too long to do. Okay, and then when you're finished with that, take a minute and format. Take the minute and format the spreadsheet in some way so it looks a little bit nicer than it does right now.